Welcome back, guys. Promise you would do it. Here we go. Brewing a beer today. Stay tuned. Alright guys, we're in the brewery now. Yeah, weather's shitty outside, and that's a weekend project that we have to do inside. So we're brewing a beer, double IPA. I'm gonna put the recipe below for those of you who might enjoy that. And yeah, I'm brewing all grain today. So let's start by crushing the grain. Yeah, so I think it's easy to see what this crusher does, right? It takes the grain, the malt, all right, and rolls it through two knurled roller and pulverizes it. I'll show you in a second. Yeah, so this is after it's been crushed, right? So the reason we do that is to release all that starch from the grain, all right? And this is my system. It's a 2-vessel system as opposed to a 3 that you see a lot in brewing communities here. The 3-vessel is essentially a hot liquor tank, mash tun, and then a boil kettle. What this system does essentially takes this kettle here and makes it both the hot liquor tank and the boil kettle. Okay, so water is right now at 161 degree. It's ready to go basically. So it's going to flood this with the grain in it, and it's going to get a recirculation going a little bit further so that it clarifies the beer. I'll explain that when we get there. All right, let me finish assembling it, and you'll see how it works. All right, preparing the mash tun. I have a thermometer here that is screwed in, a little bungee cord that holds the insulation in place. This is coming through the bottom, right? So this is a I don't know if you can see, but the bottom is rounded, so that way it you know, it collects all the material, all the mash, and doesn't have any loss, basically, or very little. The loss comes from the absorption of the grain. That's it. That's my own design here. So what I did, one year I forgot a pot outside, and it rained in it and then froze, and that blew out the bottom, you know, made it round. It's like the ice just created this watertight kind of barrier, and the hydraulic pressure just pushed, you know, the water freezing, just pushed the bottom out. So that's what I did with this one. Took about a year to make because it had to freeze at the right place and everything. So rounded the bottom and put one of those weldless soldered connector on it. All right. So that's what it is. I have a Blickman autofill, it's called, right? So a couple of stainless steel balls. That's basically, it's like a toilet filler, right? So it's like a little valve that will stop the water flow as the water level comes up. All right. Other essential part to this whole thing is a false bottom. Okay, so this is what keeps the grain from falling when I open it up and fill my boil kettle with it. All right, so again, what I did here is just a little nipple that I opened up at the bottom so that the water can go through, as it, you know, it only basically fills in a few fills in a few threads here at the bottom, so it allows the water to come in. So I just screw that at the bottom. All right, just like that. All right, we're ready for the grain. We take the grain, fill the mash tun, and as you can see, it's a pretty messy operation. Actually, this is one of the most dangerous part of a brewery. When they have, let me start this here. I have a vent for it. Hopefully it's not too loud, you can still hear me fine. But these particles in the air, when you grind, you know, big batch of grain, are actually flammable, and that can cause explosions. So be careful with that. Not that it would matter probably in our size breweries, but you know, home style brewery. But for a commercial brewery, that is a big deal. All right, we don't need the fan for the mashing process. We do need a pipe, however. Yeah, as you can see, it's pretty nasty out there. Good thing we're brewing, huh? All right, close the valve. Water is at 165 right now, so what I'm going to do here, I'm going to just let it do its thing a little bit. I need to put some additive to the water, right? My water situation here, I need to add a little bit of gypsum and a little bit of calcium chloride to the water. The reason we do that is couple-fold. It actually gives the water a different quality, okay, when it comes to brewing. That's why, you know, certain regional brewery have better taste than others, is because their water is very good. You know, and I'm not going to talk about a specific state, but Colorado makes really good beer because of that. Vermont does as well, because their water is really good. So anyway, calcium chloride, a little bit of gypsum, the calcium that is needed to break this down. Okay. The reason we mash basically is so that the hot water, or the water at a certain temperature, is gonna basically activate enzymes that are gonna break down the starch. Okay, and what that does is basically converts the starch into smaller sugar. Okay, because starch is a big long strand of sugar. So it activates enzymes that break that down into smaller pieces that yeast can digest and basically make alcohol with it. Right, that's why we do beer. So that's the whole goal of the mash. I'm gonna now fill my mash tun with my hot liquor or water, right? So I don't know if you can see here. Let me bring you a little bit closer. So we're filling, right? So what we're going to have to do right now is take this and make sure that the water reaches all the way through the grain. All right, I'm bringing you in real close here so that you can see why we do this. So you see, water is all the way through, but there's this dough ball that we call them that gets created if you don't agitate this correctly while the water is there. You see, here's a few more, right? So what these are is essentially the water saturated the outside, and just as you would do with flour, you know, that you drop in water, if you don't break them down, it's just going to create this dough, basically. The mashing part here converts the sugar, like I said, the starch into the sugar. And it does that by basically activating the enzyme all with every single one of the starch molecule that it finds, right? Starch, yeah. So we have to be careful with that step. We have to make sure that the mash is all good and uniform. Get rid of the dough balls as we see them. All right, pretty good. Put some more water. Alright, so you're going to see here in a second the flow's reducing because my float is closing the valve. Alright, and that's what we're looking for. Alright, so we're at the right level. We're going to stop this. Alright, mash is basically happening right now, so you know it has to go for an hour. So I'll set a timer and I'll come back to you. Yeah, nothing going on right now. I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about temperatures and things along those lines. I was telling you, you know, kind of in a broad kind of way that the enzyme, the amylase, turns the sugar, the starch into fermentable sugar, you know, small enough that the yeast can deal with them. What I didn't really tell you is that there's two types of enzyme that are present in this mash here, alpha and beta amylase. And what they do is that they break the starch differently. Okay, beta amylase is a very specific breaker of the starch, and it breaks them in very small chain, which are what the yeast can digest the best, right? So so the more beta amylase, the more simple sugar you're going to have, and the more you're going to have good fermentation. If everything was only alpha amylase doesn't care. It just goes through and just cuts any which way, you know, it just cuts. And some of those longer strands that may be left can't be dealt with the yeast with the same ease as the smaller sugar would. So why is that important? Well, when you brew beer, you do beers you like, okay? And in my case, I like my beers to be a little bit on the drier side. And that's the control that dealing with those two enzymes gives me, all right? Beta amylase being a more precise cutter that will just give me really small sugar strand will make the beer drier, because basically the feeling of dry versus not, you know, think about a dry white wine and a more sugary white wine. Well, there you go, right? The sugar. It's basically, if there's more sugar in the liquid, it feels more, for lack of a better term, wet, all right? It's not wet, it's sugary, okay? But the drier one has less sugar, okay? How do you control that with this? Well, the beta amylase likes to ferment well between 146 and 151, whereas the alpha works best at 150 to 154, okay, degree Fahrenheit, all right? So that's why I do my mash around 148, all right, is where I like it to be. That's where it is right now, okay? So that way, and again, this is not exclusive, right? Think of it as the activity is like two curves that overlap, and the more you're towards the 148, the more of the beta you're going to get. The hotter you are towards 152, 153, then the more beta amylase you're going to basically promote, okay? So that's why you do this way, because again, you know, you saw me do an all grain beer, okay, meaning that I start from grain. There's another way you can do this, and it's using extract. Extract is what is basically the liquid that's going to come out of there gets reduced into a molasses. So a big, thick, sugary liquid, right? And you just put that into your water and you go from there, all right? So this whole step that we're doing right now would not be necessary with an extract beer. But you are at the mercy of that extract. You know, what temperature was it mashed at? And obviously, to evaporate it, some heat had to be you know, given to the liquid. You know. But yeah, so that's why I like to do all grain. That's what I've been doing for a long time, because I didn't think that brewing beer is something that you save money with. Not at all. You're just brewing really good beer and beer you like, you know, and that's what I'm doing here. So this still needs about 40 minutes of mash time here, but it's looking good. All right, see you in a few minutes. All right, so we're gonna start the recirculation here. So I've opened my valve a little bit. You know, I'm using this screen mash basket here to keep my mash clean, basically, you know, so that I don't have too much junk in it. I mean, because there are junk coming out of there. You know, I'll show you when I pull it out. But yeah, so now what we're gonna do here is start the recirculation here. What that does is basically, because of my float in the mash bucket here, whatever comes out gets refilled. All right, so the recirculation filters the mash a little bit, you know, like you would do if you had a regular 3 vessel with a mash tun. You know, you would let the grain kind of settle at the bottom, and you would sparge over that to keep it from, well, to filter it. But at the same time, this way, you know, I'm recirculating and getting my temperature back up a little bit, so I have to be careful of that so that it doesn't go too high. And yeah, we're going to do that for the last 20 minutes of the mash. That way, yeah, it's going to get all filtered out and all nice and clear. Well, not clear, but nice and clean, let's say. All right, see you in a few. So while we're waiting for the mash to be completed, let's talk about the hops that we're going to put in the beer. There's 4 different kinds I'm going to use today: Simcoe, Mosaic, Citra, and Cascade. All right, all have citrusy kind of notes in them, and that's what kind of makes them a good pairing all together. The thing about hops as well that I should mention is that the longer they stay in the boil, the more bitterness is extracted out of them. So what we try to do is time these things, and you're going to see the recipe at the bottom here in the description, that we don't add all these things at the same time or in the same quantity, because we're not looking for the same thing out of them. For that Simcoe here, this is going to be an ounce, basically for the whole 60 minutes. This is, you know, if you look at the notes on them, you know, it's citrus and piney. Okay, the citrus that you can expect from a Simcoe is much more of a grapefruit, you know, that has that bitterness in it. You know, think about that grapefruit rind a little bit. So still citrusy, but different flavor than the citrusy you'll find in a Cascade or a Citra, which is a whole lot more sweet, you know, like especially in a Cascade you get much more aroma of orange and mandarin, you know, those kinds of things, than you would do in the Simcoe. And then that's, even though they both say citrus, doesn't mean the same kind of citrus, right? So anyway, also know that the longer you leave the hop in, yes, it's going to get more bitter, but it also is going to lose some aroma. So when the aroma you want to get through to your beer, you know, you kind of put it later in the recipe. All right, so we're going to start with Simcoe. Simcoe has these citrus and piney, but it's also a very clean bitterness, and we're going to put just a little bit of it, you know, like an ounce, like I said, well, a little bit. Somebody would say that this is a lot of hops for a 5-gallon beer, but this is a double IPA, and it has to stand up to everything else that's going in it. So Simcoe for bitterness, a little piney, a little citrusy. Then we're going to put some Mosaic in at 5 minutes boil. Okay, this too has some citrusy flavor, but this one also has more stone fruit type of aroma. You know, you get more of a, you know, a little peachy maybe, or plummy type of flavor. You're also going to get some blueberry maybe, you know, so depending, you know, but that's kind of the flavor profile of this. And the citrusy is also more more towards the sweeter end, although it does have some of that same bitterness. That's why these two play together pretty well. Citra is going to be added as a Whirlpool addition, meaning that I'm going to put 3 ounces of this when I'm done with the boils, because what I want from this is not bitterness, it's flavor, and that, you know, citrus, tropical, fruity. So this is very much a pleasant type of flavors that you want to come out of this, right? I'm also going to use that and the Cascade as dry hopping, you know, after 5 days, 4 or 5 days, depending on where I'm at with the gravity. And again, to extract really aromas that are on the sweeter, floral, pleasant type thing, and not so much bitterness. All right. So I use these little Pringle single serve container here, because I think they make really nice little boat, you know, scale boats they call that, you know, so that you can, you know, put it there, you tar it, you know, and then you can put your hops in there, and I number them so that I know what I've put in. All right, so let me prepare what I'm going to put in the boil. We're almost done with the mash. We have what here? We have about 5-6 minutes to go, so just enough time to prepare the hops. See you in a minute. Hey guys, to know if the mash is done here, I'm using this tool here, which is a refractometer. Basically, light comes in and gets refracted with a layer of the liquid that I put in between, you know, the two area here, the prism and the little plastic thing there. And what it does, it gives me a reading. In this case, I'm at 12.5 bricks, which is what this measures. At 12.5 bricks, we're looking at 1049, 1.049 of specific gravity, which puts it right at the right there. My estimated value based on the software I'm using is 1052, so we're right there. So can't ask for anything better. All right. To complete the mash, all we do, shut the pump off and let the liquid run off into the boil kettle. That will take about, you know, 10 minutes or so. So I'll see you in 10 minutes. All right, the temperature has been raised, so now we're going to start boiling real soon here. What I want to talk about now is water level. All right. I didn't discuss this initially, but that's one of the main things you do when you prepare a recipe. You have to account for how much water you need and have it ready to go, right? And the way you kind of reason that problem is backwards, all right? So, fermenter. So this is a 5-gallon batch. So I'm going to put in my fermenter somewhere in the neighborhood of 5 3/4 to 6 gallon of this wort here. All right, and so from there, let's say 6, right? So I start from the, and the reason I say 6 is because there's going to be a loss, you know, there's going to be, I'm going to flush the fermenter a couple of times, you know, and empty the ball at the end here that collects all of the junk that is produced by the fermentation, right? So anyway, it's going to come down to about 5.5, somewhere along those lines, and I have to account for the loss of equipment while I transfer it to the keg and all of that. All right, so anyway, let's say I want 6 gallon in my fermenter. From 6 I'm going to put in there. I have to have enough liquid that as it evaporates, I account for that. So I'm going to burn about 2 gallon an hour with this, evaporate 2 gallon an hour with this. 5500 watt electric, you know, element, you know, that will do that to you. All right, so I'm going to burn 2 gallons for that, right? And then the absorption of the grain is 1.5 gallons in my case, and loss of the instruments and everything. All right, so I started this whole process with 9.5 gallons of water in my hot water tank, hot liquor tank. All right. All right. So as you can see, we're done with the getting the liquid out of this. Right, it's just trickling. I'm gonna let it do that because it doesn't hurt anything. You know, it's trickling right now. I don't know if you can see on the surface here, we're starting to see some movement. Okay, and this is one of the most dangerous part of the boil. It's basically what they call the hot break. As this foam kind of gathers at the surface and the pressure from the boil is happening, okay, you see over here it's moving. All right, so this can get bubbly and can overflow, right? And then you have a bad day because that stuff is sugary and you have it all over the place. It's a mess to clean. So what you have to do is stay real close here so that if it does happen, okay, you shut the power off, or you know, in my case it's a little bit easier to control because I have an electric element, so all I have to do is hit the switch here and it goes off, right? If you're on a propane tank, well, that's a little bit more tricky, but you just have to keep watching, you know. All right, now you see the boil really starting to happen. 207 it tells me. All right, we have a good boil. Waiting for the hot break to happen, and what that means, and you'll see in a second, the hot break is when that foam gets all reabsorbed in the liquid. All right, and at that point there's a lot less chance of boil over. Yeah, I can see it just by how thin the foam's getting. You know, it's about to happen here. Alright, and now's the time where we have to start this because we won't see each other in a second here. Alright, since we're at the trickle here, I'm going to shut this off, take this out of the way here. Alright, hot break is happening. Alright. That was the hot break, uneventful because I kind of dealt with it, you know, kind of preemptively as opposed to let it just do its thing. All right, one of the things I want to do right now is show you this here. Because before I put my first hops in there, you know, I want to clean this up. But you see, you know, we don't do it now. But oh, is it hot? Yes, it is. My wife would tell you I have hands of asbestos, basically. All I'm doing right now is trying to get the water out here. Okay. All right. So you see all the junk that's accumulated. So all of that would be in my mash if I didn't use this mesh filter, which I love. You know, I'm using it all the time. I'm going to actually put the hops in there. Let me clean it. I'll be right back. Another thing that I like to do with my double IPA specifically is put corn sugar, right? I'm going to put a pound of it in there. That's the first thing I do with the boil. So this is basically straight up yeast food to be transformed in alcohol, right? Why am I doing that? It's not so much that I want to increase the alcohol, it's that getting that much sucrose in it, dextrose I mean, basically will dry the beer up even more, okay? Because if I had to build this amount of gravity, or you know, the amount of sugar in there to make a double IPA at 8.5% alcohol, I would need to put a lot of malt. And malt obviously has flavors, and the more of that you put in, I mean, the heavier the beer gets, the, you know, everything becomes bigger, right? So I like to do this to have a clean taste, still make a double IPA, and, you know, to my taste, a drier beer, which I like. All right? First edition at 60 minutes, boom, going in. And you have to be careful with that too, because that could boil over as well. Let's start the timer for the book. Hey guys, let's talk about the how hard you're boiling this. All right, big debate. You know, hard. You know, boil it really vigorously, or boil it barely, right, or somewhere in between, whatever. Obviously, a couple of things affect this. You know, the harder you boil it, the more evaporation you have, right? There's also the concept of Maillard reaction, which, you know, you've all probably heard of it, you know, as, you know, brown food tastes good, you know, Han Burrell on the Food Network there. What it is, basically the same thing that's happening to a piece of meat or to a vegetable that you fry, or you know, the browning of it, right, is basically sugar being caramelized, you know, and that reaction is known as the Maillard reaction. Obviously, nothing's gonna really brown in it because it's liquid, right? What's going on here is that the harder you boil, the harder you create those micro Maillard reaction inside the boil, right? So what I like to do, and I'm going to reduce it just because I don't really like to have it this much, so, all right, so I can adjust my controller over here to just now do a more gentle boil. It's still boiling, you know, but it's a more gentle boil, because, you know, to me there's no debate, hard boil or not, you know. It's basically what you want out of your beer. The more Maillard reaction you're going to create, so essentially the harder the boil, okay, you're going to generate sugar, caramel in your beer, and it's going to taste now more caramelly. Now, there are styles of beer where this is something that you want. In this particular beer, I don't want it. So a slow and gentle boil for me is going to be a better mean to my end in this particular beer. But if I had one of those big German brown more sweet beer, you know, I would probably crank it up and let it go, because that Maillard reaction is another layer of flavor inside your beer, and it makes all the difference. So the same beer, and I've tried this before, take the same recipe, same beer, same everything, boil one super hard and one like this. One's going to be drier, less sweet, the other one's going to be full bodied, you're going to get a lot of caramel note in the beer, and that's another knob that you turn and you control when you brew your own beer. Alright? So yeah, you know, sometimes having a beer while you brew, and that's kind of the thing that the internet kind of tells you, but there's a lot of stuff to do while this thing is doing its thing. Like right now I'm cleaning this mash tun. Once I'm done with that, I'm going to have to sanitize the fermenter, which I'll show you as well. But yeah, I don't understand these people that just stick around and have a beer while they brew. Well, I do understand them. It's a lot of fun. But there's a lot of stuff to do in between. And if you don't like cleaning, don't take home brewing as a hobby. Alright? Alright, so the way I sanitize my fermenter here, Star San, right? I'm going to put an ounce. Maybe a little measuring device here. Now this is going to foam, but it's going to sanitize the whole thing now. So I'm going to put the collection bottle there for yeast if you want to harvest it, or this is essentially to get the drupe out. Okay, drupe is whatever junk comes out of it. Alright, and this is going to go in here. Alright, I'm going to fill it, I'm going to let it be for about, you know, for a while, you know. It's not in my way right now, so there's the recipe on the Star San is that, you know, 1 or 2 minute contact will delete them, it will kill all the bad stuff that could affect your beer, and gonna leave that 10 minutes. May not be at the recommended concentration, but it's gonna do just fine. Okay, I've always done it this way and never had any problem. All right. Hey guys, so we're about 15 minutes out from end of boil here, and we're entering a time where, well, not right now, but we will soon, right? Where the beer is going to be vulnerable. So the reason we have sanitized the fermenter is because the beer is going to go in there cold, and at that point in time, with the amount of sugar involved, it's very easy for a bacteria or anything like that to get into that beer and do bad stuff to our beer. So a couple of things we do here. So this is my plate chiller. So at this time, we need to start sanitizing it. What that means is simply running, so I've hooked it up to my pump and everything. So what that means is that I'm running the boiling water in it. All right, so if there's anything that it's been growing in there that I don't know about, I've cleaned everything very well the last time I've used it, but you never know, right? So as soon as the boil stops, or you start, well, yeah, as soon as you get out of the boil, you don't have a choice. Nothing is going to kill the bugs after that. So everything you do from this point on has to be sanitized, and you have to make sure that you don't infect your beer. All right. So this is going to run for about 5-6 minutes. I'm just going to turn it off, because once it's warm enough, it's, you know, it's going to be, it does what it's supposed to do, right? I'm going to turn it on a couple of times. And we're at the point where we're going to put our Whirlpool tablet, all right? So basically, this is a fining agent. What it does, it basically coagulates. Once the temperature is going to drop, it's going to coagulate some of the proteins that are left in the beer, so that it gets a clearer beer, okay, a clearer product. All right, 5 minutes. Mosaic goes in. All right, boils over. We're turning off the heat. All right. So what I want to do now is bring that down to about, it's at 208 right now. So I'm gonna start chilling it a little bit until it reaches 195 or something like that. Then I'll turn everything off so that I can do my up stand there. All right. So now cold water goes in this, goes out there. We start the pump, and the temperature will be coming out real soon. Now this is just like a little heat exchanger. It works really well. We're already at 200. So we just dropped 8 degrees. All right, 198, 197. All right, I'm shutting it off. So this is the right temperature for my Whirlpool edition. All right, Cascade goes in. All right, and this this is sitting for 20 minutes. See you in 20. Alright, we're finishing the cooling after the 20-minute period, and we just have to get it to a 75-ish degree before we put it in the fermenter. Alright? I'll show you that when we're there. Alright, one of the last steps here for the beer. Let's fill this. So what I did here, as you see the foam and everything, that's been sanitized well. So there was a little pressure build up there. Okay. Alright, so I put a little diffuser here, and you'll see in a second why. Beer doesn't like oxygen, but wort does, and yeast does. So what we have to do is inject a lot of oxygen at this time and then deny it afterwards. Alright, so let's start the pump. So you see what it does? It sprays sideways, okay, so it basically aerates the wort. Yeah, a good amount. Alright, we're done. We have beer. Well, we don't have beer yet. We have beer when we take this. Alright, this is the yeast I'm going to use. This is Burlington Ale from White Slab. I like to use liquid yeast. I think they're more active, quicker than, well, I mean, again, question of preference. There's more variety definitely in these yeast than you have in the dry version. Alright. So you cut it, you open it, goes in. Now we have beer. Let's make sure all those little guys are in there. Alright. Yeah, so it's wort until you add yeast to it, technically speaking. Alright, so now we're putting the airlock on it. What is that? That's just a little device that's filled with star sand, you know, and as you see, as I push on it, you see the liquid. So basically it lets the CO2 out as it ferments and doesn't let anything in. Alright, so let me open that up, which I didn't do. Yeah, so the little collection ball down there is going to get the tube out. I'm probably going to empty it after 1 week. This is fermenting for 2, then it goes in a keg and we can taste it. Alright? Hey, this is what it is. A little cleanup. I hope you like what you saw, and give me a like, and yeah, I might have a little video when we do the tasting of this in a couple of weeks. Alright? See you on the other side. Bye.